In a tiny, crumbling Manila neighborhood, a barefoot boy with a tattered shirt clutches an old, beaten guitar. People pass by without noticing him, but when he strums the first chord of Hotel California, the air seems to still. His voice, pure and haunting, echoes through the alleys somewhere far away. A world-famous judge is about to be amazed. Rain slicked the narrow streets of Manila as a barefoot boy darted between puddles, clutching an old battered guitar to his chest. The city moved around him like a relentless tide, vendors shouting their wares, jeepneys honking, neighbors calling out in a language of survival, but the boy seemed almost invisible, a shadow in the chaos. His tattered shirt clung to his small frame, soaked through with the afternoon drizzle, and his worn shoes flopped uselessly in his hands as he ran. Paused for a moment under a flickering street lamp, letting the rain beat along the frets of his guitar. The instrument had long lost its shine, scratches lining its wooden body, strings held together by more hope than skill. Still, to him, it was more than a guitar. It was his voice, his escape, his connection to a world that often seemed too cold and too fast to notice someone like him. With careful fingers, he plucked a few tentative chords. The sound was raw, unpolished, but it carried a quiet, aching beauty that made passers-by glance up, just for a second, before moving on. In that moment, he wasn't just a boy running through Manila's streets, he was a musician, a dreamer, a child daring to believe that his song could matter. Life hadn't been easy for him. His parents were gone, lost to circumstances too cruel for someone so young to comprehend. Every day was a test of resilience, scavenging for food, finding shelter during sudden rains, and helping other children who had no one else. Even in hardship, he gave what little he had, half of his meager rice portions, a warm smile to a frightened toddler, a shared coat to a shivering neighbor. His small acts of kindness became the rhythm of his life, a quiet rebellion against a world that often demanded survival at the expense of humanity. As he walked past the crowded market, the boy's eyes fell on a group of street performers. They sang, they played, and for a fleeting moment, the boy imagined himself among them, confident and free, the world listening to his voice. His heart swelled with longing, but fear tugged at him, whispering that someone like him, poor and alone, had no place on a stage meant for stars. Yet the music inside him refused to be silent. Humming a melody under his breath, he lifted the guitar again and played, letting the notes rise above the chatter, above the rain, above the constant noise of survival. Children stopped to listen, faces lighting with wonder. A vendor paused mid-sale, intrigued by the haunting tones that came from a boy whose appearance screamed struggle, but whose music spoke of dreams and hope. In this scene of struggle, the boy's world is a blend of hardship and beauty. The rain, the broken streets, the hungry eyes of his neighbors, they all form the backdrop of a story that isn't just about poverty. It's about resilience, about the quiet courage it takes to dream when every day is a battle, and about the small, unnoticed acts of kindness that ripple far beyond what anyone can see. The boy took a deep breath, fingers poised on the strings, ready to transform his pain into something that could touch hearts, an invisible stage awaiting him in the most unlikely of places. As the boy wandered through the winding streets, the rain had stopped, leaving the city shimmering under puddle-reflected streetlights. He tugged the tattered strap of his guitar over his shoulder, fingers still numb from the morning's chill. His stomach grumbled, but for a brief moment, hunger was replaced by something brighter, glimmer of possibility. He paused in front of a lamppost plastered with posters announcing auditions for a talent show he had heard whispered about in the neighborhood, America's Got Talent. His eyes widened as they scanned the bold letters, "Sing for a chance to shine." The words seemed to leap off the paper, whispering to him, "You belong here?" The boy's heart thudded in his chest. He had sung countless times under the open sky, on rooftops, in empty classrooms, and in the narrow alleys where children gathered to watch him strum his guitar. But the idea of stepping onto a real stage, under bright lights, in front of judges, with names he'd only heard of on television felt both thrilling and impossible. Fear gnawed at him. Who am I to go there? I'm just a boy with a broken guitar. Yet, as he looked around at the bustling streets of his neighborhood, he realized that every challenge he had faced had been preparing him for this moment. Every time he had shared his food, helped a younger child, or lifted someone's spirits with a song, he had been building courage he didn't fully understand. Music wasn't just a dream, it was his gift. And perhaps the world was waiting for him to share it. The boy spent the afternoon practicing in the shadows of a quiet rooftop. His voice started soft, uncertain, but it grew stronger with each chord. The melody of Hotel California floated into the evening air, blending with the sounds of the city, the distant calls of vendors, the hum of jeepneys, the laughter of children playing in the streets. Each note seemed to carry his hopes upward, defying the weight of poverty, hunger, and loneliness that had always pressed on him. Even as self-doubt crept in, he imagined the faces of the judges Simon Cowell, the others, and wondered if they could hear the passion and sincerity in his music, if they could feel the story of his life in every note. He pictured himself walking confidently onto the stage, head held high, guitar in hand, and singing not for fame, but for the chance to inspire, to show that even a struggling child from the streets could create something beautiful that touched hearts. By nightfall, his determination had crystallized. The boy returned to the lamppost, tracing the edges of the audition poster with his fingers. A quiet smile formed on his face as he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, I will try. No matter what." The spark of hope burned steadily inside him, lighting the way through uncertainty, fear, and doubt. This was the moment when dreams began to take shape, not as distant fantasies, but as steps forward, guided by courage, kindness, and an unshakable belief that music could transform both his life and the lives of those who listened. The boy's journey was just beginning, and though the path was unknown, he felt, for the first time, that he was ready. The lights of the AGT stage were blinding as the boy stepped forward, the polished floor reflecting the glow in almost cruel contrast to the worn streets he had left behind. The audience's murmurs swelled around him, a sea of anticipation he had never experienced in his life. His small frame seemed almost swallowed by the grandeur of the stage. His tattered shirt and scuffed shoes, standing out against the glamour and precision of the world he had only ever dreamed about. Simon Cowell's eyes narrowed as he leaned back, arms crossed, skepticism written in every line of his face. Other judges whispered to one another, eyebrows raised, unsure what to make of the barefoot child clutching a battered guitar. The boy swallowed, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on him, yet inside, a quiet resolve ignited. He knew he had one chance to let the music speak louder than fear. He lifted the guitar, fingers trembling slightly over the strings. The first few chords of Hotel California floated into the air, fragile and hesitant, like a candle flickering in the wind. For a moment, there was silence. The audience leaned in, unsure what to expect. Then his voice came, soft but steady, carrying a haunting clarity that drew every heart toward him. As he sang, the boy closed his eyes, pouring not just notes, but every ounce of his life into the song, the cold nights alone, the hunger, the small acts of kindness he had scattered like breadcrumbs along the way. The melody swelled, rising from vulnerability into a rich, emotional resonance that seemed too profound to belong to someone so young. Children in the audience wiped tears, and a hush fell over the room. Then something extraordinary happened. Midway through the song, his His eyes fell on a young girl in the audience, struggling to clap, due to a disability. Without missing a beat, he paused briefly, giving her a warm, reassuring smile. The audience felt the gesture ripple through the room. This wasn't just talent. This was empathy, humanity, and the purity of a child who understood that music could reach beyond applause. Touching souls. Simon Cowell leaned forward, eyes wide, the skepticism melting into awe. Every note the boy sang seemed to transcend the stage, carrying the weight of hope, perseverance, and kindness. The crowd erupted in quiet gasps, then in standing ovations as the final chord resonated. The boy's voice softened, yet the emotion lingered, leaving everyone breathless. The judges were on their feet, and Simon wiped a tear from his eye, his expression unguarded. The boy, though nervous, smiled, not for himself, but because he had shared a piece of his heart. In that moment, the world seemed to pause, acknowledging that greatness isn't measured by wealth or polish, but by courage, kindness, and the willingness to give one's gift unconditionally. As the applause thundered around him, the boy lowered his guitar, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. He had not only survived this moment, he had transformed it. The audition was more than a performance hit, was a declaration that even a struggling child from the streets could shine, could inspire, and could remind everyone that the purest talent is always intertwined with the heart. The final chord hung in the air, trembling like the heartbeat of the boy himself. Silence followed for a heartbeat, a suspended moment where every eye in the theater was fixed on him, every soul waiting to see what would happen next. And then, as if the world finally exhaled, the room erupted in applause, a wave of sound that washed over him, dizzying and surreal. The boy's chest heaved with relief, but more than that, with an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Simon Cowell was on his feet, eyes glistening with tears he did not attempt to hide. His sharp, critical expression softened into one of sheer amazement. "That," he said, his voice catching, "was one of the most extraordinary performances I have ever witnessed. You are incredible." The other judges, equally moved, joined in their applause, merging with the standing ovation of the audience. It was a moment of validation, a recognition that talent, courage, and heart could overcome even the harshest circumstances. The boy's small hands shook as he lowered his guitar, the weight of the stage and the audience pressing against him. Yet he felt lighter than ever before. Every challenge he had faced, the hunger, the loneliness, the nights sleeping on cold street, culminated in this very moment. But what moved him most was not the applause. It was the realization that his music had reached people's hearts, that his story of perseverance and kindness resonated far beyond himself. As he scanned the crowd, his eyes fell once again on the young girl he had noticed, mid-song. She was smiling, her small hands clapping with joy, a sparkle in her eyes that mirrored his own sense of triumph. In that instant, the boy understood that music could be more than entertainment. It could be connection, healing, and hope. The world, in its vastness, had acknowledged him, and through him, it acknowledged the struggles of so many others who often went unseen. The producers stepped forward, offering a scholarship and mentorship that could change the trajectory of his life. But the boy's smile was humble, almost shy. He realized that this moment was bigger than himself. It was a beacon for anyone who had ever doubted their worth, for anyone who had felt invisible. Every note he sang had been an act of bravery, every pause, every glance, every chord a testament to the power of persistence and compassion. Simon Cowell approached him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have something very rare," he said. "Not just talent, but heart. Don't ever lose that." The boy nodded, swallowing hard. a mixture of pride and humility flooding through him. In the eyes of the world, he had been recognized as extraordinary. But in his heart, he knew it was kindness, courage, and the desire to uplift others that had truly carried him here. The stage lights bathed him in a golden glow as the audience continued to cheer. In that radiant moment, the boy realized that life had granted him not only recognition, but purpose. He had transformed pain into beauty, struggle into inspiration. And the boy from the streets of Manila had, in one unforgettable performance, reminded the world that talent shines brightest when it is coupled with heart. The boy stepped out of the theater into the Manila evening. The city lights reflecting in puddles, still lingering from the afternoon rain. The streets were the same as before, bustling, chaotic, and full of struggle. But everything felt different. He walked with a quiet confidence, his battered guitar slung across his back. A small but significant smile playing on his lips. The applause, Simon Cowell's words, the standing ovation, they weren't just memories. They were proof that dreams, resilience, and kindness could create change. He returned to his neighborhood, and the children who once watched him play in the alleys gathered around. Some still clutched tattered toys, others had empty bowls in hand, yet their eyes sparkled with curiosity and hope. Without a word, the boy knelt and began teaching them chords, sharing melodies he had learned, showing that music wasn't just for the stage, it was a gift to be shared, a bridge to a brighter world. Laughter and song filled the streets, echoing through narrow alleys that had long been defined by hardship. Word of his performance spread quickly. Neighbors, local vendors, and even strangers stopped to congratulate him. But what struck him most was how many people were inspired, not by his fame or recognition, but by his story, the way he had persevered despite poverty, the way he had remained kind even when life had been unkind. Parents thanked him, children. Pangaea hugged him, and those who had once overlooked him now paused to acknowledge his presence. Proof that acts of courage and generosity can ripple far beyond what one can imagine. Back at home, he carefully cleaned his guitar, now a symbol not only of his talent, but of his journey. He looked at the strings, worn and scarred like his own hands, and realized that every scratch, every imperfection, carried meaning. It was a reminder that life's hardships do not diminish beauty, they can enhance it, giving it depth, character, and authenticity. He placed the guitar by his side and sat quietly, thinking of the girl in the audience whose smile had touched him. The audience that had held their breath, and the judge who had believed in him. Each connection, each moment of shared humanity, had transformed his life in ways far beyond applause or recognition. Months later, he returned to the stage, not for himself, but for others. He organized small community concerts, teaching music to children who had never had the chance to hold an instrument. His story became a beacon of hope, a living proof that no matter how small or poor one might feel, the combination of talent, determination, and heart could change lives. People came from far and wide, not just to hear him sing, but to feel the warmth, resilience, and kindness that radiated from him. As the sun set over Manila, the boy, now no longer just a child from the streets but a symbol of hope, played his guitar. The music carried through the alleys, the marketplaces, and into the hearts of everyone who listened. And in that melody was a simple truth: the greatest stages are not only lit by spotlights, but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to share one's gift with the world. He had risen from struggle to inspiration, reminding everyone that even the smallest act of perseverance or kindness can transform lives forever.